We have all felt the sting of broken loyalty. You invest your time, your resources, and your empathy into a friendship, only to be betrayed or discarded when you are no longer useful. Today, we are decoding Machiavelli's unspoken rules on how to handle betrayal, and we're going to prove they work by walking through the lives of men who lived them. A Mongol chieftain who turned on his own blood brother, a French king who buried his most dangerous friend alive in a fortress, a tech founder who cut loose the people closest to him to save his company, and a backwoods lawyer who turned his bitterest rivals into his most loyal soldiers. Society teaches us that friendship is a sacred bond, but the dark truth is that your closest friends are often the most likely to sabotage you. By understanding these unseen rules of human behavior, you will learn to turn the pain of broken loyalty into your ultimate strategic leverage. By the end of this video, you will have 5 steps and 5 case studies to prove each one, so that you will never operate at a disadvantage again. Step 1. Recognize the illusion of friendship. The first step to gaining ultimate leverage is shattering the myth of loyalty. You must understand that you often do not know your friends as well as you imagine. Friends frequently agree on things simply to avoid an argument, and they cover up their unpleasant qualities so as not to offend each other. Because of this, honesty rarely strengthens friendship, and you may never know how a friend truly feels. Furthermore, you must be wary of friends because they will betray you more quickly, as they are easily aroused to envy. Machiavelli understood this brutal reality, noting that since men are bad and will not keep faith with you, you too are not bound to observe loyalty with them when the reasons you pledged it exist no longer. To see this law in action, travel back to 12th century Mongolia to a young man named Temujin, the boy who would become Genghis Khan. Long before he ruled an empire, Temujin had an Anda, a sworn blood brother named Jamuka. They were as close as 2 men could be. As children, they exchanged gifts and swore eternal loyalty to one another under the old steppe rituals. As young men, they fought side by side to rescue Temujin's kidnapped wife, and for a time they ruled the plains together, their camps pitched side by side, inseparable. But the illusion could not survive success. As Temujin's reputation grew, followers began drifting from Jamuka's camp to his. The 2 men held different visions of power. Jamuka favored the old aristocratic order, while Temujin promoted men based on loyalty and merit, regardless of birth. What looked like brotherhood was, underneath, a rivalry waiting to surface. The unspoken resentments Jamuka never voiced, the envy of watching his blood brother eclipse him, eventually broke into open war. The 2 former friends fought each other for years. In the end, it was Jamuka's own remaining followers who betrayed him, dragging their former leader before Temujin in chains, expecting a reward for their treachery. Temujin did not reward them. He executed the men for daring to betray their own commander. But he did not let old sentiment cloud his judgment about Jamuka either. The friendship was over the moment their interests diverged. Temujin absorbed Jamuka's people, unified the fractured tribes of Mongolia under his own banner, and was proclaimed Genghis Khan, ruler of all. The lesson is brutal, but clear. The bond you think is unbreakable is often just 2 sets of interests running parallel. For a while. Step 2. The trap of favors and gratitude. The second step is recognizing why your generosity was weaponized against you. When you do favors for friends, or bring them into your professional life, you gradually discover the toxic qualities they have kept hidden. It is your act of kindness that unbalances the dynamic. The receipt of a favor can actually become oppressive to a friend, slowly bringing out flashes of resentment and envy until the friendship fades. People want to feel they deserve their good fortune, and being chosen simply because they are a friend feels condescending. The more gifts and favors you supply to revive the dying friendship, the less gratitude you receive. Ingratitude has a long and deep history, and you must learn to never expect gratitude from a friend. No one learned this lesson more violently than Nicolas Fouquet, the finance minister of 17th century France. Fouquet was immensely wealthy and immensely eager to secure the favor of his young king, Louis XIV. In August 1661, he decided to prove his loyalty in the grandest way imaginable. He invited the king to Vaux-le-Vicomte, his private estate, a palace more lavish than anything the crown itself possessed. He filled it with fireworks, a specially commissioned play by Molière, a banquet served on solid gold plates, and fountains more elaborate than the king's own gardens. Fouquet believed this extravagant gift would cement his position forever. Instead, it did the opposite. Watching his own finance minister outshine him in his own kingdom did not inspire gratitude in Louis. It inspired suspicion, humiliation, and envy. The lavish gesture did not read as loyalty. It read as a threat. This man has more wealth, more taste, and more power than his king. 3 weeks later, Louis had Fouquet arrested. He spent the rest of his life imprisoned in a remote fortress, his estate seized. Louis took Fouquet's own architects, painters, and garden designers and used them to build something even grander, the Palace of Versailles, a monument built on the ashes of a favor that backfired. The lesson repeats through history. An excessive display of generosity rarely buys the loyalty you're hoping for. More often, it manufactures the exact resentment you were trying to prevent. Step 3. Cut ties and quarantine. When a friend betrays you, your instinct is to argue, to seek closure, or to try and fix them. This is a fatal mistake. You must apply the quarantine strategy. There are people who draw misfortune upon themselves through their destructive actions, and if you enmesh yourself in trying to help them, their inner instability will infect you. These infecting characters can be recognized by their turbulent past and their long line of broken relationships. When you suspect you are dealing with such a toxic former friend, do not argue and do not try to help. You must flee the infector's presence or suffer the consequences. In 1997, Steve Jobs returned to a company that was 90 days from bankruptcy. Apple had spent over a decade sprawling into dozens of overlapping product lines, many of them championed by long-tenured executives, some of them friends and allies from Jobs' earlier years at the company. Jobs did not spend his first months trying to rehabilitate every broken relationship or salvage every struggling division out of loyalty to the people running them. He didn't negotiate, and he didn't try to fix what had become dysfunctional. He quarantined it. Within weeks, he cut the product line from roughly 40 models down to 4. Entire divisions, along with them, were simply eliminated. It cost him relationships. It cost some people their jobs and their pride. But by refusing to get entangled in the instability of a company, drowning in its own scattered loyalties, Jobs freed up the focus and resources to rebuild around a handful of great products, starting with the iMac. Within a few years, the company that was weeks from collapse was profitable again. The instinct to save every relationship, every project, every person who once mattered to you is often the very thing that drags you down with them. Sometimes, the only winning move is to walk away, cleanly and without a second negotiation. Step 4. Shift focus and weaponize your enemies. Step 4 is where you build your empire. While friends can become spoiled and tyrannical, your enemies are an untapped gold mine that you must learn to exploit. A man of power understands that a former enemy will often be more loyal than a friend because he has more to prove. If you can bury the hatchet and put a former enemy in your service, they will move mountains for you. As Abraham Lincoln observed, you destroy an enemy when you make a friend of him. A wise man profits more from his enemies than a fool does from his friends. In 1860, Abraham Lincoln won the Republican nomination for president by defeating 3 far more famous, more experienced men: William Seward, Salmon Chase, and Edward Bates. Each of them considered themselves the obviously superior candidate. Each of them, at various points, had publicly dismissed the gangly, self-taught lawyer from Illinois as unfit for the office. A lesser man would have shut his rivals out entirely once he won. Lincoln did the opposite. He appointed Seward as his Secretary of State, Chase as his Secretary of the Treasury, and Bates as his Attorney General, building his cabinet almost entirely out of men who had underestimated or openly opposed him. He went further still, bringing in Edwin Stanton as Secretary of War, a man who had once humiliated Lincoln in front of colleagues during an earlier legal case, treating him as beneath his notice. Lincoln understood something his rivals didn't understand about themselves. A man who has doubted you and is given the chance to prove that doubt wrong will often outwork every loyalist in the room. Over the course of the Civil War, Stanton became one of the most fiercely devoted members of Lincoln's inner circle, driving the Union war effort with relentless intensity. Seward became one of Lincoln's closest confidants and defenders. Lincoln didn't need men who already believed in him. He needed men who had something to prove, and he gave every one of them the stage to prove it. Step 5. Establish clinical distance and absolute leverage. The final transformation requires emotional detachment. You must recognize that all working situations require a kind of distance between people. Keep your friends strictly for friendship, but when it comes to your ambitions and your success, work only with the skilled and competent. This is the same discipline the Stoics preached 2,000 years ago. The idea that you cannot control who betrays you, but you can always control how much of your inner peace you hand over to the betrayal. When you detach emotionally from what was done to you, you free up all your cognitive energy for your own personal ambition. You stop replaying the wound and start building the empire. Understand that clinical distance is not coldness for its own sake. It is a filter. It lets you keep the handful of people who have actually earned unconditional trust, while removing your emotional investment from everyone else, the co-workers, the acquaintances, the friends who only show up when it's convenient for them. Most people operating at a high level learn this the hard way, usually after being burned once by someone they never should have let that close. You are learning it now, before the damage is done. This is also what separates strategy from bitterness. Bitterness keeps you tethered to the person who wronged you. You're still thinking about them, still replaying the argument, still waiting for the apology that isn't coming. Leverage cuts that tether. It takes the same energy that used to go into resentment and redirects it entirely toward your own position. The betrayal becomes fuel instead of a wound. You transform from a victim of broken loyalty into the architect of your own future. Win the war within yourself and become the man nobody can use, fool, or control again. Every man on this list: Temujin, Louis XIV, Jobs, Lincoln, was betrayed, disappointed, or discarded by someone close to them. The difference between the ones history remembers and the ones history forgets isn't that they avoided betrayal. It's that they refused to let it slow them down. If this breakdown gave you a new lens on loyalty, subscribe for the next deep dive into the unspoken laws of power. And let me know in the comments which of these 5 steps you needed to hear today.